Hey everybody, welcome to week 12, the Advanced Permaculture Student Online Live Q&A. Thank you for joining me. I'm a little bit under the weather, but I've got some tea and I got some water, so I should be okay. I will be sending this link as I normally do when we start to the group so that everyone can join and dive in. So we are live week 12. All right, well, here we go. We are live. All right, guys. So my microphone is working. That is good. I have your questions all lined up and ready. That is good. So a lot of questions are out there around temperate aquaculture. And temperate aquaculture is mostly tending the wild because it's mostly just fishing. And so that goes into like the commons, really, into a shared space. And it is harder for us to, you know, create these designs that aren't strictly bioregional, and almost specific to the animals that are involved, animals and plants and waterways. Let me just make sure. Yeah, it's there. All right. All right. Well, that is there. So I'll give people a few more minutes to show up. This is the earliest one we have done, I think. We usually do them at 8:30. That might have been the expectation. Yes, I'm still a little bit sick. The family is still recovering as well. Whew. But good posture and breathing helps. All right, well, I'm going to get on with it and start getting to your questions. All right. I'm going to also pull it up on here so that we can see anyone's questions from the live comments. I'm going to also pull it up on, there we go. Oh, there you are. Everyone's here. Okay. Good morning, everyone. It just didn't show it on the other feed. I'm going to have to take extra breaths, I think, today because I can't kind of do my circular breathing in my nose. Oh, shoot. Technical difficulties. Hold on 1 second. Let me pause. Let me mute this while I fix this. And we're back. Sorry, somehow it fell and the top came off. So I'm gonna put that down. Check this out. You guys see this? Here, you guys see this? Here we go. So this is, the words are backwards, but it's from Dan Marquez and Antoinette Marquez. And it's got their own, Venn diagram with so much detail. I love. Let me get this ready here. All right, we're ready. Thank you all for being here. It is wonderful. I'm actually going to split screen all of this so I can see. Aaron, Monique, Landon, Allison, Katie, Barbara. Thank you all for coming. It is nice to see you all. Yeah, you read it backwards. That's amazing, Monique. Maybe you all have a way to flip that. I don't. Or maybe it flips automatically for you. I don't know. But either way, it is wonderful to have you all here. It's wonderful to see that you're all here. And so something I'm going to work on actually for my writing course is this thing where we're going to create really interactive sessions. Like we're going to have like live calls where people were like putting your piece of writing up and you're calling in and we're talking live and everyone's watching and commenting and we're having a whole full-on discussion and then we're moving through multiple lenses. So, and then it would be like instruction and then live intensive interaction, live call-ins, people really, being there physically maybe, and, lots of fun stuff. So I really feel like that's the future, is getting involved. Hey, Sheldon, is getting involved. It's not backwards. That's amazing. So it was backwards for me, but this was not backwards for me. So for you, so maybe I'll pause and let you see it a little bit. And so you can kind of see what's going on. It's pretty impressive. I was popping back and forth being like, oh, you can't see it, but making it frustrating. Sorry about that. So it is wonderful to have you all here. As I was talking about aquaculture, a lot of people feel like, why isn't there temperate aquaculture? Temperate cultures are primarily, they're kind of split between, one side of Eurasia, Europe, and the other side of Eurasia, Asia, you know what I mean? And in those areas in Asia, they have a long history in the subtropical areas of doing amazing aquaculture. In some cases, living above, and I grew up gazing at oil paintings of these things of people living above the water and being able to fish and grow fish beneath their houses. And so this design was a part of life. Aquaculture was a part of life, just like gardening has been a part of life in European culture. And so if you're from Cambodia, if you're from Vietnam, fish farming is very normal there. Aquaculture, working with the water, essentially half fish farming, half farming on the water and floating gardens, half rewilding and partnering with natural systems. You end up, or a third or whatever, but you end up in this beautiful dance with nature, and the line bleeds between it being like for you and for nature and all this stuff, and it's so beautiful. And the reality is, in that moment, we are nature. And that's what this is all about. You know what I mean? There was a post this week that was super popular that went around and I shared about how it's like, we're not defending nature. We are nature defending itself. You know what I mean? And it's like, that's so true. It's like, we need to be the mama bear, defensive kind of mechanism for nature, for our kids, for the future, for our communities, and for our freedoms. And so there's like so much discussion this week, and it's really good and What's going on? All right. Come on. Let's get that. Yeah. All right. Can you guys see me? All right. Hold on. Let me get the link. Let's make sure. Refresh. I think. Okay. This is why I need to do split screen so that I see you all and I respond to you and I see this one because they both break at different times. All right, sweet. So cycling back 3 or 4 sentences. So I was talking about how we've got to keep the fish at least a certain temperature. So if we want to be doing fish and animals and all these things, we have to have a certain temperature. And so in some situations, the trade-off for investing energy, infrastructure, and building all those things, the technology side of it, totally makes sense. You're in the middle of a city. You're Will Allen. You're feeding kids. You're changing communities. You're giving people purpose and meaning and a new pathway forward in a food desert. It's amazing. But anywhere there's a river, a stream, a lake, or a pond, or could be, let us take the opportunity to go that higher level, that higher route, and rewild and fish. And so I want to honor both. I want to honor like the European model of like living off the land and fishing responsibly. And then I also want to, and that takes rewilding first in some cases, right? To abundant levels, right? And then knowing how to harvest for even greater abundance, because that's how nature works too. So I love that. I want to keep that going. I want to honor those, those fly fishermen and all those kinds of things. I love that. I love that. I have such, good friends who are really into that, really into hunting, and they know their money goes into restoration, protection of the wild, and they have this sacred, they have this sacred relationship with nature. And they come from all different walks of life and, and all different beliefs and philosophies, but they all feel that same way about nature. And it's really awesome and powerful. But then I also want to jump over to the other areas of aquaculture. And so what's really interesting is there's a lot of different ways, but it actually, if you start up in Asia and you go down and go through all the islands, you have a consistency of practice that has been practiced for a long time. And so, even in the Aboriginal Australian culture, the first white explorers who encountered their culture and started documenting what they were seeing, talked about, and I'm referencing dark emu. So this is actually a reference to an area, a section where it like proves like the blindness of racism, but they're doing these amazing ponds, and they've got these amazing like fish traps built into the pond. The fish goes into this fish cage, and he just goes, and he like releases this thing, and then it goes, it brings the fish over and puts it right down into this fish area for his like trapped fish. And then he just resets it. And it's this effortless, amazing, regenerative, naturally built technology. And it's ingenious, you know what I mean? And it's also, shows that they're managing that space, those fish, that aquaculture. And it's really sad because the person documenting it, I forget exactly who, Monroe comes to my mind, but that's probably wrong. They said, look how lazy he is. And yeah, anyway, those kinds of things like upset me, because I feel like, that's my family you're talking about. And I want to honor them And so that's like, in a lot of ways what Bill's work really has been. And I've talked about this before, maybe you haven't heard it, but he couldn't have come out and said like like Aboriginal culture, everyone, let's do Aboriginal culture. He had to do permaculture. And then he like filtered in all the work that he did as a professor, which was to study the Aborigines. Most of his work, most of his writing, most of his books actually are not publicly available. They're in the University of Tasmania's library. And so I want to get access to that and read that, because that's where his stuff's from. I want to read the original. I always like reading the original source material. And I like mixing things. I like finding commonalities with things. I like finding contradictions and then exploring why. And for a lot of people that drives them nuts. But that's okay. That's okay. That's how we grow. Realistically, right? We either copy, which is probably the easy street. That's what most people are taking. They're just copying what other people say and believing it 100%. Or we're remixing and combining ideas. Or no, we're taking ideas and putting them into new context. Combining ideas as mashup. But those are the three different modalities for human expression. And so I'm always looking at all the different cultures and trying to, work with them. I think that the best examples that we have for temperate climate aquaculture would be Sepulcher. You know what I mean? He defies that tradition of aquaculture being wild for the most part in Europe. And his pond making is just superb. I know Mike Garcia has a European training in pond making, and he and I have talked about sharing some of the stuff that he's been doing and working on for years, because he does it differently than everyone like he knows here in America is doing it. So there's a lot to be explored, but I think that Sep's systems are really telling. Everything he does, and we talk about his systems in the book too, and in the course, in the audiobook, in the last Permaculture in Action week. He aligns his ponds so that they're aerated naturally by the wind. They're in line with the wind, and not perpendicular. So they get like a boop of wind. They get this of wind. And that also invites birds, to land, to add a nutrient, to add eggs. And so there's a lot that goes in. And then his ponds, they don't freeze because of how deep he creates them. And well, maybe some of them do freeze. I don't know exactly for sure. But I know I've seen pictures where it's like not frozen, and then there's the frost line, and then there's the frost. Do you know what I mean? So they're keeping things off there. That's microclimate. But even if they do freeze, the idea of having the deeps is all that life can go down and go into like hibernation or in stasis down there in the depths, and then come back up. And then having the shallows is also important for breeding. And then differentiation of pH. So we've got these two different traditions, and both are really relying upon and leaning towards rewilding as much as possible. It's less control, than like aquaponics and hydroponics and even gardening. You know what I mean? It's much more wild, when we're working with lakes and ponds. But ultimately, those systems are much more resilient. Let me just tap the window. Shh. All right. He's jealous. The cat is stalking something. So Hey, Jay. All right, so I'm just checking to make sure there's no audio or video or any complications. All right, well, you all are making me feel better. I don't know if you could tell from the first, few minutes to now, I'm feeling a lot better. Yeah, so I think that the best examples that we have are those. And so there's a few different things. There's keys, and we cover them in this chapter. We cover them in these lessons, and I can review them here. There needs to be aeration. There needs to be cycles. So you need to have a food cycle built in. So plant or fish to fish or fish to plant, you know what I mean? Oh, it doesn't matter, or crustacean to, it doesn't matter, but you need to have the food built into the system. You need to have the fertility built into the system as well. So you might have, a bunny manure, going in and feeding that bottom layer, of the trophic layer of the pond, so that they feed up from there, right? You cause a bloom, and then, but you want to be careful with that. You might be doing things to control the insects. You might be doing a light at night. You might be doing a rock below the light under the water, so that there's a shallow area. It heats up the water, and then those smaller fish even can come up and get those jump up and get those bugs. You might have one over a deeper area. The bigger fish can get those bugs. Be careful with electricity and water, of course, always. But you can get waterproof lights and those kinds of things as well. The idea, though, is that we want to create a system that does not rely upon us as much as possible. So you could have aeration that's automated. You could have aeration that's on a sensor. You could have air. There's so many different degrees to this, and for many of us, the temptation is to do it. And I've tried this. Is to do the barrel of fish, or to do a few barrels of fish, and you can do that. But often we're not doing it in glass. We're doing it in plastic. Sometimes we're doing it in drinking plastic. Some of the YouTube videos are not in drinking plastic. You know what I mean? So like, we always got to keep our thinking caps on as we do these things. And then, the whole thing with hydroponics, aeroponics, aquaponics, where is the nutrition coming? Where is the fertilization coming from? And invariably, it's fossil fuels. It's not natural. So there's a lot of, little pitfalls there and down that road. So yeah, it can feel narrow, right? You're like, well, Matt, it feels like you're forcing us down this 2-lane, you know what I mean? It's like we can either go this way or this way. And it's like, I mean, I could see using the barrel batch system to grow food, small fish, or, like duckweed or spirulina or something to feed something else. Totally. I'm digging that for the little guys, because it makes sense. It's a big space for the little guys, but as soon as we think like fish, you know what I mean? Like a fish that we want to eat, it just becomes, when you think about the scale of that animal's like habitat. And I know some of us have grown up with Shamu. I did too. And I went and saw Shamu when I was little. Won't we be seeing animals like that ever again? But the reality is that some of us still have to get over that whole size ratio of seeing these fish in these like small containers, when these fish represent animals that cover enormous amounts of territory in order to be healthy. Not only are they covering that enormous amount of territory, but they're filtering the water as they're covering that. So they're picking up different nutrients. They're constantly getting fresh water. They're constantly getting different temperatures, different pHs. I mean, it's just like conditioning, you know what I mean? And it's nutritional, and It's that hormetic stress, if you've heard me talk about that. It's that Goldilocks level of stress. It's diversity. It's, the spice of life for these animals. So yeah, Carol is here. Hey, Carol. It's so nice to see everyone stop into the live. I really appreciate it. Like I said, you guys bring me energy, and actually in the middle of my sickness, the thing that I felt like really took me over the next level was talking for like over an hour with Murad Gamble about teaching teachers. We were just trading notes about teaching teachers, because I've done it outside of permaculture for just like best practices, training teachers on how to adapt the way they teach now and to teach the way we need to be teaching in schools everywhere, which is best practices, which is student-centered, project-based, so that you're actually doing something with the skills, so it encodes into the authentic part of ourselves. It's so cool. It's fun. Kids love it. It's student-centered. It's like, what do you want to learn? What are your dreams and aspirations? And then I filter in like the English standards. And then they don't like even think about it. They're like, I've been studying skateboarding. Check out my essay. And it's like, you didn't write essays last year. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, I love it. So that's the world I'm from. I'm the person that teaches teachers to ditch homework and get higher, standardized tests from their kids without teaching to the test. And you have like liberated, engaged kids at the same time who are enthusiastic about life and their futures. So yeah, and that may be why a lot of people like my courses, because of the joie de vivre that is in it. And I really care about that as the foundational currency through, the circuitry that we create together. Yeah. So the mycelial circuitry, right? Yeah, I'm waiting for a, reprise of I Sing the Body Electric, but that mycelial version. Wow. So this is a really good point. So Carol turned a bathtub into a frog regeneration project. And see, that's the size to scale thing I was talking about. And with the worms, I did worm bin in a tub. That was just always this like beatific image to me. Didn't work out the way I wanted as much. It didn't, because when it got cold, it held the cold. Things slowed down a lot when it was cold. And because it wasn't deep, like in the ground, it wasn't as protected. I found that I really preferred doing pit worm vermicomposts in the drier regions in the Central Valley. So cool. I love little frogs too. I love the microscopic frogs that are like that big, and you're like, and you just like are so worried now about like stepping on a frog. You know what I mean? You're like, what if I don't know? I would never know. You know what I mean? But there's also resilience to being that small. All right. So yeah. Anyway, I love this stuff. I think, one of the things that maybe we don't talk about enough is like the aquaculture side of like birds and ducks. And I have ducks. I love them. They're still here. They've been with us through all the cold. We still got chickens. They're sleeping in trees. We've created situations where they're warmer, but they're like really wild animals, almost the way our animals have been trained, the way our animals live. And so our chickens sleep like 30 feet up in the air in trees. But then when it gets cold, they go inside the teepee and sleep in there. And so there's and then we set up a heat lamp and an area for the ducks, and they know they can go in there if they need to, and they do, but they mostly prefer not to. It's really fascinating to just watch what animals, when they're given the opportunity to develop their brains and their full spectrum of instincts, and maybe beyond their normal level instincts, just their individuality, it's really cool. So ducks, I really like ducks. And I think that the reason our pond is the way our pond is, the reason it's holding more water than it ever has, and it's leaking less, is for one reason, well, two reasons, is the bokashi ball we put in, and then the duck manure. So the duck manure is feeding the microbes, keeping those microbes alive, I'm pretty sure, in the sludge, continuing that process of creating colloids and gels, which is what I suspect is the reason EM at lower organic matter levels has the ability to make, well, there's the ability to make heavy metals and certain toxins non-soluble. And people say they disappear sometimes, but we know that's not possible. They're being tied up, and at 45%, you know, Jeff Lawton says at 45% organic matter, all heavy metals are tied up. People were working years on their soils, know how hard it is to reach 45%. It's a lot of work, it's a lot of investment. That's a tons of organic matter, literally tons. So singing Frog Farm, I talked about that this week with Michael Kundick in from the Seattle in our podcast with Seattle, the Salt Lake City air protectors. Man, breathe that. Ah! And we were talking about sounds like someone's coming in. Hey, I'm live. Instantly backed away. I forgot what I was saying. Remind me if it matters. If it wasn't on tangent, oh well. But I haven't even gotten to your questions yet. This has been fun. So, but I'm just answering, like, you know, the most of these questions are the things that I've been asked so many times about. Oh yeah, we were talking about, it was Michael and I, we were talking about shoot, I forget. Anyway, this is what happens when I'm sick. I don't hold my train of thought as well. And they say I'm a lot. Yeah, Michael and I talked about the air quality issues and inland port proposal, scary stuff. The reality is, oh, that's what I wanted to talk about. It all leads back together. So they're threatening basically almost all of North American birds and all North American wetlands because there's a bottleneck of all the migratory birds through Salt Lake. And once they poison that area, as they're planning to do, and destroy those habitats as they're planning to do, they're going to destroy and pollute, because toxins are mobile, and they carry them on themselves and within themselves, and then it gets passed on trophically, and then it gets passed on genetically, and then we've got a real mess. All the wetlands are being threatened by this inland port, and so we have the situation where if we don't stop this inland port in Seattle, all those other areas where hunters are eating duck, their families, their children are eating those ducks or other birds, or, you know, and I mean, all these things relate too. It's just going to be really, really dangerous for a lot of people and for a lot of animals, and it's going to speed up extinction. It's going to destabilize already stabilized and restored wetlands, or restoring and stabilizing wetlands even. A lot of stuff. And it's all because they're operating on an old story. They're operating on the old economy. They think that they need to create more, you know, ports and more shipping, as if being, you know, self-reliant is not what we need to head towards. The reality is that those kind of old systems are just not leading us anywhere but degeneration, as you all know. So let us hop over here and talk about some of these questions. Hot tub aquaponics, that is awesome. All right, here we go. Natural swimming ponds, swimming pools still talked about having a pump or aerator. Is there a way to establish this without the need for electricity? Absolutely. The reality is the only way to do it without electricity is to have some other force, some other aeration mechanism. And yeah, you could go very big, you know. You could have a windmill that turns a water wheel. You could have water that's constantly refilling it and constantly overflowing. You could have, so that you reroute a stream and it comes in and then goes back out. You could have pressurized water that is aerated, maybe with a mini trompe, so it's getting that aeration in there, and then it's releasing it, maybe a mini geyser or a fountain. There are a lot of ways without electricity to do this, but they require potential energy. They require a force of some type to be leveraged in order to make it happen. Great question. More information about Matt Power's involvement in living Earth systems. All right. Well, living Earth systems is Eddie Garcia's work. I want to go and visit Eddie more and study more with Eddie. Eddie is on, he's on one of the islands. I think it's Molokai. But I know that he works with different people and travels around a lot, so he could not be there right at this moment. But he spends a lot of his time mostly on Molokai. That is his, where he grew up. So he at one point was a steward, an assistant consultant, helper for the restoration of the Molokai fish ponds. He was just trying to help, and trying to learn, and he learned a lot, and he added some of his own ideas to that repertoire, and we see that in his work playing out on sites all over Hawaii, all over Southern California. So my involvement would be that I'm just friends with Eddie, and I'm friends with Frank, and Frank and Eddie are good friends, and Eddie, is connected to like Kiss the Ground with me, and he's an affiliate of mine, just like Kiss the Ground is, and Patagonia is friends with all of us, though I'm like, well, I haven't worked directly with Patagonia, but they certainly have. Though I'm certainly friends with them, and they've worked with, Permaculture Magazine, which I was, assistant editor to, or something like that. I had some sort of title for a while. No, the North American branch was running. So we're kind of all just friends, and we're kind of all just helping each other out and supporting each other wherever we can. And that's what my kind of involvement is with almost all my teachers. I just offer support. And I just try to, kind of just give advice where I can, provide promotion where I can, provide materials where I can, and then learn and adapt what I'm doing where I can, so that it recognizes the work that they've done. So that's my involvement. All right. I like the idea of aquaculture and aquaponics. However, I don't want to farm the fish. Is there a type of fish that doesn't wildly reproduce? Yeah, a fish that's alone doesn't wildly reproduce. Fish don't decide to reach population capacity and stop. What happens is they run out of oxygen and die. That's why the section we talk about, oxygen is so important. We have to make sure that we have our ratios of fish to water correct. And then we have to make sure that we're aerating in order to keep our fish alive. Everything that's natural is going to reproduce. Fish, are going to reproduce. Plants are going to reproduce. Everything's going to, have sex and reproduce and make more. That's the natural inclination of everything. So, you could get one of something, or with the animals, they're like a weather goat, so they can't reproduce. You have you might get a whole herd of male wethers that might be really kind. People need to do that, and or people eat them. You know what I mean? And it, goat is the most popular meat on earth. Particularly because of this, that when they have tons of male goats, and they're like, well, I want female goats, more valuable. And the males stink and are aggressive. And so the people create wethers, people create food. I mean, there's like all these things that people do. And people are turning their wethers into, I'm on a tangent, aren't I? Into lawnmowers too. But nonetheless, the idea of having something that doesn't reproduce wildly is also, I mean, there's like invasive to wildly reproduction, but we kind of want things to really produce. That's the idea behind all of our work in the garden, in the food forest, and even aquaculture. We want to create an explosion of life to restore the natural abundance of the earth. So that's the thought behind that. All right, so now I'm going to pop over to the other questions. All right. Just looking over things. Wow, Carol, I cannot wait to visit. Wow. Yeah, so, and Carol isn't alone. Many of you have unbelievable sites that you're working on, already developed, or are about to move on to. I myself, I'm in the middle of a transition. I've been moving from place to place, for several years, setting up sites, doing volunteer work and all sorts of things. And now we're really planning on getting our farm and settling down and doing a lot of the things that we're showcasing, but now we'll be able to do, because they will be ours. It'll be our land. And so I'll be able to do the close-ups. I'll be able to do the step-by-step how-tos for so much stuff. So if you were waiting on that, well, that is definitely coming this year. So be excited about that. Okay, Aaron. Okay, Aaron. Well, maybe I wouldn't do fish. If you don't want lonely fish, you don't want to eat the meat, you don't want to use the fish emulsion, you don't want to, use that as part of your system for growing fungal dominant tea or something like that, then don't do fish. Maybe, and I mean, you might be doing fish so that you can run a system. Then maybe you do like koi fish or something long-lived. And yeah, I wonder how fast they reproduce. But yeah, I would do some research there. But I know that people have had koi fish, you know what I mean, for a very long time in the system. They get very big. So maybe you could create a habitat for a couple koi fish, and then you could get not meat and not lonely fish, and you could still get the fish fertilizer. But then, you might also be like, well, I don't want the fish. I don't want the liability. I don't want to actually die on it. Or when it does die, I don't want to deal with it. Well, that's spirulina then, right? You start doing spirulina, you harvest that, you make sure it doesn't screw up the pH, right? Because it's super alkaline when you're doing this. And then maybe and then you're putting that as food for the plants because it's a fertilizer. I believe it doesn't have a structure that, it has a structure that basically makes it so it's instantly absorbable. I want to say it has no cell wall. That might not be right. But it's somehow incredibly absorbable. And so you can use spirulina like as a liquid fertilizer and plants just uptake it. Crazy, right? So I would look into cultivating our smaller friends, spirulina, and try feeding them that way. This is so fascinating. Because has anyone done this? Spirulina fertilizer aquaponics. Growing spirulina in aquaponics, the Spirulina Academy. This may be the answer to providing nitrogen organically to algae, but the water would still have to be treated to match the growing of algae. Yeah, it's the pH issue. So this is the pH issue. So it's like, yeah, you could grow it, but the pH would be too high, likely. And so for your plants. And so it's much better if you're growing them separate and then harvest it, and maybe even like somehow rinse it or dry it or something like that, and then add it in, watching your pH. And then, you know what I mean? I would do that. So great question. Really great question. And great follow-up. Thank you for jumping in. Is there anything else? Yeah, I'm super excited to see how people are working with water. Yeah. And so I'm going to be moving on to a property with 2 lake-sized ponds. So we're going to be doing some very interesting things. We're going to be having the ability to test so many things out, to measure things, to show what's possible, and it's going to be amazing. So stay tuned. Even if you're getting ready to finish this course and you're just like, oh, I've just got, a little bit left. Well, there's more to come. We've got the video. We've just been so sick that we haven't been able to really work on translating, working on a bunch of things. We've just been trying to get everyone healthy lately. So yeah, more to come. Thank you all for joining me. This was week 12 live Q&A, the Advanced Permaculture Student Online. I'm Matt Powers. Live regeneratively.